Good evening, and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news, broadcasting live and available on demand. Available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Thursday, December 22nd, 2022. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Victor Diaz-Herman. This evening, we bring you the news and perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR, but designed for our LGBTQ plus community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 37 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Let's welcome Evyn Almanzar, a trans student at JP Taravella High School, where he is deep into the drama and intrigue of his sophomore year. He has been publicly speaking out as an advocate for mental health and queer student rights since the age of 12, a lover of writing and nature who often enjoys both at the same time. Evyn was a member of the Don't Say Gay or Don't Say LGBTQ rally this last February, where he said, quote, "On Queer News Tonight, I want to make people hear us as a student body, as well as members of the LGBTQ plus community, and let them know how they can help," end quote. Welcome, Evyn.
Hi, happy holidays, everybody.
Likewise.
Let's welcome anchor Bob Hentschel. Bob is an accountant with a local construction company and a member of various LGBTQ plus Disney Facebook groups. He recently joined the planning committee for My Hollywood Pride. He describes himself as a nice widow man with a house in Dania Beach, a Disney Vacation Club membership, and a self-supporting cash flow. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. And My Hollywood Pride is January 28th and 29th on Hollywood Boulevard between 19th and 20th Streets. Come join us for the Pride 100 brunch Saturday the 28th at 11 o'clock. The big event is Sunday from 1 to 6, and then join us for tea dance afterward. Find us at myhollywoodpride.com. Tickets are now available, and a good time will be had by all.
It was fun last year, wasn't it? Yeah.
Okay, let's welcome anchor DJ Nena, resident DJ for Lit Bar Wilton Manors and a military veteran from New Jersey. DJ Nena has a BM in commercial music technology and an MA in English in creative writing. She has been a local DJ and music producer for the LGBTQ community of South Florida for over 20 years. Good evening, DJ Nena.
Felicidades, mi gente! Happy holiday days! Let's welcome anchor Gregg Shapiro, an inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. Gregg is the author of 8 books, including his latest, Fear of Muses, an entertainment journalist whose celebrity interviews and music reviews run in a variety of regional LGBTQ+ and mainstream publications and websites. His movie review columns, called Screensaver, can be found in South Florida Gay News, San Francisco's Bay Area Reporter, and RottenTomatoes.com, and more. Good evening, Gregg.
Good evening, happy holidays, one and all.
Hi.
We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening, we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Thursday, December 22nd, 2022, Happy National Date Not Bread Day, which, by the way, is not to be confused with National Date a Nut Day.
Two very different things.
I've dated many nuts.
I've ate many nuts.
Oh my.
All right, well, let's queer up business. The LGBTQ plus community experiences increasing financial inequality. Throughout their lives, LGBTQ plus individuals experience difficulties around their finances, as social exclusion and discrimination affect every aspect of our lives. While the community has made significant strides in terms of legislative freedoms, things are still far from being equitable, especially from a financial standpoint. Minority groups in the U.S. often get left behind by traditional financial services, and the queer community is no different. According to one survey conducted by the National Endowment for Financial Education, 30% of LGBTQ plus adults experience discrimination or exclusion from financial services. When it comes to the current financial state of the queer community, research shows that it has less earning power than its hetero counterpart. On average, bisexual men earned $85,084 per year. Heterosexual men earned $83,469 per year. However, gay men, and this is why we're live. However, gay men earned $56,936, while heterosexual women earned $51,461, lesbian women earned $45,606, and bisexual women earned $35,980. Moreover, students also found that LGBTQ plus folks are less likely to have disability or critical care insurance, a will or estate plan, or even a mortgage or retirement account. Additionally, CNBC research shows that a same-sex couple is 73% more likely to be denied a mortgage than an opposite-sex couple. Nearly 40% of LGBTQ plus respondents in a recent study said the quality of their financial lives has turned out worse than they expected. Going forward, policymakers need a new approach to narrow the financial inclusion gap by advancing LGBTQ plus equality. You know, I found this to be surprising because not too long ago, gay men, same-sex couples were considered dinks, double income, no kids, who were making more money than most. Right. And so reading this and learning about this was quite surprising. What are your thoughts?
I was shocked by this too. And speaking just for myself, because I have personal experience with this, both, you know, from the discrimination thing, but I know for myself, a lot of my own financial woes were self-imposed. And it comes from, you know, when you're tagged, I'm going to say the word, faggot at 11, you get this idea in your head that you're not valuable. And, you know, the consequences for me personally is, yes, you know, my intro talks about my self-supporting cash flow. If you knew the effort I go into every day to monitor that, but still, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to retire because of, you know, I call it my young and stupid days, but still. I'm also going to mention here, I have friends in the recovery community who are members of a group called Debtors Anonymous. For anyone who has problems with money and debt, debtorsanonymous.org. You know, I'm just going to throw that out there because I know, and some of these are, you know, these are my gay and lesbian friends who, you know, they had money troubles and, you know, they picked up some things along the way that are helping them out. And it's like, okay, let me spread the word because, you know, we're not taught to value ourselves ever.
Right, right. Well, I have to wonder how much of this is also geographical. Like, is this the case in New York, or is this the case in Kentucky. Tennessee or Kentucky or Alabama? Right. I just wonder if it's the same across the board, or if it's different in larger metropolitan areas.
There's one thing that rings true across the board, and I have to be honest.
Women.
Women. We are never making enough money. Ever. it doesn't matter if you are gay, straight, bisexual, women, or we are always at the bottom of the financial totem pole.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times I can never understand, because when you're equally as qualified or somewhat actually more qualified than the male counterpart, you're still getting so much less. And it's very frustrating. So the article doesn't really speak any volumes to me. And I'm like, you haven't told me anything new. I am always going to be broke.
Yeah, we crunch the numbers right here. The difference between gay men and gay women, $11,330.
That's
the difference between straight men and straight women, $5,475.
Yep.
We have, in order to go into depth on these issues of not just queer financial differences, we also have to face the differences between sexual identity and gender identity.
I think it's interesting you bring that up, because one thing that came up for me with this article or with the story is the lack of inclusion of our trans community, as well as our Black and Brown community members.
Yes.
POC and trans POC people are their numbers aren't even
lower, right?
Absolutely, even lower.
Right,
not even considered a living wage at this point.
And oftentimes not even able to find employment to begin with.
Yeah. In order to face these issues, we have to face the even smaller and more minuscule issues that we find more redundant. And we still have to do
Valid
that.
point.
Okay, let's queer up health. BetterHelp AppTherapist suggests conversion therapy to a gay man. A 22-year-old gay client of the mental health app BetterHelp said that he was told to turn straight to get along with his family by a therapist. BetterHelp is an online platform that links clients to therapists who provide therapy through text messages and phone calls. The company advertises itself as a solution for people who live in remote areas or can't afford therapy at market rates. Caleb Hill of Tennessee said that he turned to BetterHelp when his parent kicked him out for being gay. He said he was connected to a therapist, Jeffrey Lambert, who told him he'd have to choose between being gay or having a relationship with his family, even though Hill wrote on his intake form that he wanted an LGBTQ plus therapist. Hill told the Wall Street Journal, he said, either you sacrifice your family or you sacrifice being gay, end quote. Hill said that he worried the therapist would try conducting conversion therapy on him. After the session, he wrote the therapist an email explaining why he couldn't continue therapy, saying, quote, I finally opened the door of the prison I built up inside, and the thought of going back kills me, end quote. He said that he avoided therapy for a long time after that session because he was worried about finding another similar therapist. And this therapist needs to have any professional accreditation. I'm not saying state license. I'm saying professional accreditations ordered by, instituted by private organizations. He needs to have every stinking one of them revoked, because the last time I looked, homosexuality was removed from the textbooks in the 70s, and I knew a gentleman back in the day who was part of that.
While that is something that could be explored, we also don't know how this information was delivered to the client. So while it could have come off as more of an aggressive thing, it could have also been, I'm seeing what you're telling me and I'm understanding it, and from what I'm perceiving of this situation, you only really have these two options, because sometimes in certain situations, those are the only two options we have.
Yeah, you know, Evyn, I agree. I think it's hard to gauge the intention in this case. The one thing that popped up, and I actually just showed it, that made a note, that pops up for me is that in the way that it's quoted, this person said you have two options. You can choose to be with your family, or you can choose to be gay. And at the end of the day,
it's not
being gay is not a choice, right? And any mental health specialist should never tell you to hide who you are.
Absolutely. And BetterHelp also has a history of controversy. They have a history of unfair pricing and data sharing, and most recently, BetterHelp was enlisted by rapper Travis Scott to help victims after the Stampede tragedy at his Astroworld Music Festival, which actually backfired on Scott, as it gave the appearance that he was profiting from other people's traumas.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Did not know this.
Well,
Ridiculously harmful situation. But
That being said, I'm glad I was lucky that, and you're asking me to go back into my ancient history, but you know, when I needed a therapist back in the 90s, there was an organization in New York, and again, I forget the name of it, but they managed to link me with a gay therapist. And I think Sun serves a similar function down here, but you know, I understand that in Tennessee, you may not be so lucky.
Right.
well, yeah, I mean, I think there are tremendous benefits to telehealth, right? Telemental health. But at the end of the day, the person on the other side of that communication needs to be informed and needs to be able to provide quality care.
Right. Now it's time to queer up religion. Over 20% of LGBTQ plus youth find comfort in religion. A new study from the Trevor Project has highlighted the comfort some LGBTQ plus youth find in religion and spirituality. In the study published on Wednesday, the organization conducted research on the religiousness or spirituality of queer youth and how that relates to mental health outcomes. It's based on a survey conducted from September to December of last year with almost 34,000 youth, along with the 2020 Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Youth Risk Behavior Survey. The study did not ask respondents which religion or spirituality they practiced. The report notes that religion can be fraught topics for queer people due to the discrimination emanating from certain religious groups, and many of these groups still exclude LGBTQ plus people. The group found that 21% of LGBTQ plus youth reported that their faith or spiritual tradition was either important or very important to them. Older youth, between the ages of 18 to 24, reported this more than younger people. Those youth who are less financially well off reported higher rates of putting importance on their religion. Of those who found importance in their religion, a majority of them live in the South. Native or Indigenous queer youth reported the highest rates of religion being important or very important. Queer youth also said that they prayed, meditated, or privately reflected on their religion at least once a week, if not more frequently. I think that the survey that this conducted is actually really important to queer youth. And we're finding that the spiritual and religious journeys that queer youth have taken actually have a really large impact on their mental health, the outcomes of that. And not only this, while that journey can be both nerve-wracking, it's also really healing. And I find it really hopeful that a lot more queer youth are finding the opportunity to find that sort of spirituality and religiousness in the way that religion has moved forward.
You know, you touched on this, how surprising it is that this is the case given how faith-based organizations have been so discriminatory. And while I think that it's wonderful that, you know, young people have a renewed or a newfound connection to religion, what I felt was lacking in this is the why. What is drawing young people to faith now, given the history that these religious institutions have had with our community and other communities like ours?
Well, it's also surprising because there's been this decline in religious identification, certainly among adults, for many years. So it's interesting that young people, and especially young queer people, are turning to religion.
There were two things that did not surprise me. Number one, it spoke about the higher rates in the South, where church is everything in the South.
True.
Okay.
God help us all. But then that the indigenous, how did they phrase it? In any event.
Indigenous and Native.
And indigenous and Native. That doesn't surprise me either, because if I remember correctly, especially among indigenous people, they've always had this two-spirit concept where...
Accepting of...
Right. And in fact, if I remember correctly, I'll use the term medicine people so as to be inclusive, they were always of these two-spirit people.
They have a long history with being more fluid within their gender expression.
That's true.
I appreciate the inclusivity of it all because, you know, when I was growing up, none of this was available. There was no talking about it at first. You just followed whatever religion your parents bestowed upon you and say, we're Catholic, so you will go to church every Sunday. You will do this, you will do that. I followed through. I did all the sacraments. I did everything, but I never felt an actual connection to spirituality because everything seemed very robotic and calculated and timed.
That's the thing.
So
you can't force spirituality.
I didn't really, I never got anything out of it, unfortunately.
I'll freely own that I'm in one of my agnostic phases that I've had throughout the years, because what you say is absolutely true. And for me personally, there was one step further of what was said in the church was never practiced on the outside world.
Right.
And I was frequently the target of,
Well, I don't think it's any secret that, to your point, that's why our community found religion and church in nightclubs.
Exactly.
With great music like that you spin at
Or we have a place like Sunshine Cathedral.
exactly.
Or Sunshine Cathedral.
Right.
Hashtag my queer church.
I'm going to call you Reverend Nena from there.
No, sir. No, okay. Far from it. But let's go ahead and queer up politics. Trump to fight for gay Republicans after Biden signs marriage equality bill. Twice impeached, former President Donald Trump has told LGBTQ plus Republicans that he and other conservatives will be fighting hard for them during this 2024 presidential campaign. Trump is widely considered the most anti-LGBTQ plus president of all time. Trump made his pledge at the Spirit of Lincoln 45th anniversary gala of the queer conservative group, the Log Cabin Republicans. The gala occurred just 2 days after current President Joe Biden signed the Respect for Marriage Act, a law requiring federal and state governments to recognize state solemnized same-sex marriages. During Trump's speech at the gala, he said, quote, "We are fighting for the gay community, and we are fighting and fighting hard. With the help of many of the people here tonight in our recent years, our movement has taken incredible strides. The strides you've made here is incredible," end quote. Trump has more recently referred to LGBTQ plus people as sickos who support the perverted sexualization of minor children, and a line oft repeated by anti-queer activists who inspire violent attacks on the LGBTQ plus people, allies, and gender-affirming medical professionals. During his speech at the gala, Log Cabin Republicans President Charles Moran said, quote, "I just heard a Republican candidate for president stand up and say he is willing to fight, and I challenge every other Republican to make the same pledge Donald Trump made tonight," end quote. Well, what a load of bull caca that is.
Nicely put.
I'm sorry.
Professionally described.
Man, he's notoriously the man who is anti everything in our entire community, anti every color in the rainbow. This man wants to have nothing to do with us. He's horrified. Also, he's afraid of us. Yeah. So, what are you trying to say?
Well, he doesn't know half the time anyway.
He sounds crazy.
And Charles Moran really needs to get back at his post in front of Bob's Big Boy. Okay? If you go past and he's missing, that's where he is. Well, and let's be honest, Miss Abraham Lincoln, her petticoats would surely be in a twist if she knew that the Log Cabin Repugnants titled their anniversary gala Spirit of Lincoln. Please.
Yeah, I would normally harpoon Mr. Maroon. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Moran.
Moron, yeah.
I have a Josh Hawley joke, which I would normally harpoon him with, but there are minors present, and there are just certain things that should not be said in the presence of minors, especially with a threatened "don't say gay" bill floating around.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Okay. I appreciate you calling me a minor, by the way.
Okay, there you go.
All right, and now we're going to queer up sports. Out lesbian Beth Mead is named BBC Sports Personality of the Year. The LGBTQ plus hero who helped propel England to victory at the UEFA Women's Euro 2022 this summer was voted winner of the prestigious award by the British public during Wednesday's December 21st live show on BBC One. Mead, who is just one of many out LGBTQ plus players in the England women's football squad, had previously won the coveted Golden Boot for most goals scored in the Euros and was also named Player of the Tournament. She held off competition from other nominees, including cricketer Ben Stokes and snooker player Ronnie O'Sullivan. Beth Mead is the second out LGBTQ+ athlete to win BBC Sports Personality of the Year, after world champion figure skater John Curry in 1976. At the awards, England's Lionesses were named BBC Sports Personality Team of the Year 2022, while head coach Serena Wiegman picked up the Coach of the Year award. Dame Kelly Holmes, who came out publicly as a lesbian in June, also won the award in 2004, 18 years before sharing her sexuality with the world. Mead revealed earlier this year that she'd never had to physically come out as gay because LGBTQ+ players in women's football are more accepted than in the men's game.
Sorry, I'm speechless for once. Obviously, I'm incredibly honoured to win this award. I'll keep saying it's cliche, but I wouldn't have done it without them girls over there and the team that have backed me. Yes, I've got this accolade. I did my job, I scored a few goals, but I wouldn't have done it without them. And I certainly wouldn't have done it without my dad, my mum, and all my family.
I only have 2 words. Yay, sports ball.
What's 46 years among friends?
Oh, wow.
That's how long it was between 2 gay people winning it. And by the way, I actually looked up John Curry. Turns out he was outed just before the Olympic Games and somehow still won that award because I think they're just so much more forward in Europe than they are over here.
But imagine that here, right?
Agreed.
Right, but I think 46 years is just way too long.
I found it interesting that she said being a queer athlete is more accepted in women's sports than in men's sports, which I want to kind of like dive into that. Is that a heteronormative thing? Is that a machismo thing?
Have you, listen.
I don't know sports enough.
No. Wait a minute. Let me clear it up for you.
Penis.
Billie Jean
Yours
King?
or mine?
I don't know.
No. No, let me clear it up for you. It's really very simple. It's the stigma that's always been placed on women in sports.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Ever since you were a child, if you had a female PE teacher, she's a lesbian. She's got to be a lesbian.
That's right.
I was taught about lesbian. The first thing that you hear, when you hear the word lesbian, you hear it when you're maybe 12, 13 years old, and it's always because it's a female PE
They're talking.
gym teacher.
Right.
That's literally, it's so crazy.
Well, it's because sports are seen as predominantly a masculine thing. So once you have women expressing some sort of masculinity, they're automatically queer.
It's true.
That's a very good point.
Yep.
And some of the butchest women I know are hetero. So there you go.
Those are the ones that confuse the heck out of me. Wait a minute, you don't play for us?
Well,
Why not?
The metrosexuals confuse me. So there we go. But, I think about, and again, I'm not a woman. I just happen to love them insanely for whatever reason I'll never understand. But, I look at something as simple as the Girl Scouts versus the Boy Scouts, and how the Boy Scouts are still vehemently anti-gay, and yet the Girl Scouts have been, hey, come join us for I don't know how many years, but it's been a minute. And, I don't remember hearing any controversy about who's that one. There are several lesbians on the women's soccer team, U.S. women's soccer team.
Oh, Rapinoe?
Thank you, Megan Rapinoe. Not a peep.
No.
And meanwhile, by the way, they're winning more than the men. They should be paid more than the men, but we won't go there. And even, there was it goes back to, if I remember correctly, there was a trans woman in women's tennis back in the 60s.
Renee Richards.
Renee, thank you.
Oh, I didn't know about her.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, I mean, it's just, you know, I said on one of these broadcasts ages ago that I considered women the superior sex, and I stand by that. I don't know. I don't think they're as bothered by, you know, this, because it's like, I mean, I witnessed it at my company office party. We have a woman assistant superintendent who is an out lesbian, and the wife of the vice president, hi, how are you? Big hug. No, you know, when it's like, no fear, no nothing. The kids got along great. Right. It's like, I think it's just the difference between men and women.
It's just something that has also, it's also been ingrained into us as a society, that it's normally men, very masculine, any sort of femininity, they are objectively against because it shows some sort of weakness. So that sort of opening up and that sort of being, what's the word? I'm drawing a blank, but they're just basically opening themselves up and to that sort of feeling.
Right.
They're scared of it.
Of course.
Okay, let's queer up entertainment. Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger experienced a clash of styles during Brokeback Mountain filming. New secrets from the filming of Brokeback Mountain are coming to the surface. During an interview with Empire, director Ang Lee praised Heath Ledger by saying he, quote, was a brilliant young actor. God only knows what he would have achieved later in life. He had so much talent. I'm sure he would have been a great director, end quote. He spoke on Ledger's quiet aura that powers the story, noting that he did most of his preparation on his own and often surprised the director with his work. Lee added, quote, one aspect I cherish was getting to witness Heath and Jake develop that relationship between their characters, end quote. The director watched everything unfold right in front of him from rehearsal all the way through to filming. Although both actors brought their own strengths to the table, Lee said they, quote, had a very different attitude towards their work, end quote. While this tension never led to any outright fightings, the actors experienced a clash of styles that oftentimes caused friction. Brokeback Mountain set the world on fire with its 2005 release, eventually becoming one of the pivotal films that brought the discussion of sexuality to the table. The main actors were played by straight heartthrobs Gyllenhaal and Ledger, whose compelling performances granted the film a whopping 141 awards. And to think the man was dead about a year after this movie ended, and you know, it was from a drug overdose, and me being me, I wonder how much of it was an overdose, how much of it was, might have been, allegedly, you know, self-inflicted. You know, I remember doing theater back in the day, and, you know, aspects of your character sort of eke into your life, and I'm going to wonder how much, you know, prior to recording, we were talking about the Joker. I have to wonder how much of Brokeback Mountain sort of awoken something he might have not been ready to handle.
Another truly amazing aspect of Brokeback Mountain, in addition to the two male leads being straight, is that director Lee is also straight. And but Brokeback Mountain actually wasn't the first time that Lee had queer characters in the lead roles. There's a movie from 1993, which is only Lee's second movie, called The Wedding Banquet, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. You have to see this movie. And it also had a wonderful queer storyline.
It raises a question. If we have all of these, well, it's not really much of a question. Actors are doing their jobs and they're playing a part.
They're acting.
And if they have a good director, they're going to do it well.
Right.
And I just find it fantastic that from what I haven't seen it yet, from what I'm hearing, they did something really right in the movie.
Well, you're absolutely
Very
right.
groundbreaking.
Yeah, it was a beautiful film. It was groundbreaking. And I think that this speaks to the level of professionalism and skill of these two actors that were able to have different approaches, but yet deliver such an amazing performance. I do wish that they told us what the clash in style was, because immediately to my mind, I was like, well, one's into leather and the other one's not. Something like, I want to know more. But no, I think you're right. It really is. They did a great job, and you should watch it if you haven't.
Yeah. I definitely will.
I feel that the clash in style is the reason why it worked. That is the whole idea. Having the clash usually brings the best art. You know, especially when you're coming from two totally opposite points of view. But just my 2 cents.
Great point.
Yeah. All right, let's queer up LGBTQ plus civil rights. Here is what the Scotland's proposed gender recognition laws mean. Scottish government plans to alter how a transgender person changes the gender on their birth certificate, reached their last legislative state this week, with amendments to a bill being discussed on Tuesday, and debates have been pushed back to this evening. The bill will introduce a system of self-declaration for obtaining a gender recognition certificate, or a GRC. It will remove the need for a psychiatric diagnosis of gender dysphoria and reduce the time someone must have been permanently living in their gender before they can apply, from 2 years to 3 months or 6 months for 16 and 17-year-olds. The age at which people can apply already has dropped from 18 to 16. Proponents of the changes hope that they will streamline a process that many transgender people find intrusive and distressing, but not affect the spaces or services they use in their day-to-day lives. Critics argue that the simplification, also known as self-identification, will fundamentally alter who can access women-only services and leave them vulnerable to abuse by predatory male offenders. All Holyrood parties, except for the Scottish Conservatives, are committed to some sort of version of change in their 2021 manifestos, but there has been growing disquiet amongst a number of Scottish National Party and Labour members of the Scottish Parliament about the detail and impact of the bill. I see this as an absolute win. How do you guys feel about it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that the system of self-declaration, I think, is the key here. And however, I can't even imagine how something that would go over here. So progressive there.
The laws over there are actually more strict.
Okay.
Yeah, I've come to find, because my experience here is that I wasn't even 16 when I got my name and birth certificate changed. I think I was either 13 or 14. It was back in 2020, and 2021. Wow, I'm gonna forget this. But I just had to have my parents sign the document, bring it to the court, fingerprint it, and that was it. I was in that Zoom call for all of 5 minutes.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
I did not know you could. Listen, I feel old because I don't know what you can and cannot do,
right?
Especially with, I'm born this way, but I feel another way. And then finally, being able to say, I may have been born this way, but this is not who I am.
Yeah.
And how awesome for you that your parents were just right there by your side to say, okay, we understand. And, having that support, so critical. My goodness.
And I'm glad to hear
blessed.
You're happy with it because, when I read it and it's like, okay, 18 plus, you wait 3 months. But if you're 16 and 17, you need to wait 6 months. And it's like, my question was, to you, knowing you were going to be here, is that acceptable? Because you clearly know, and apparently you're not even 16 or 17 yet, but you clearly know, I don't understand why someone who is 16 or 17, who might be earning their own money and may or may not be paying taxes, why are they being subject to a longer wait period than someone who has reached the age of majority?
So I understand the reasoning, because it is something that, while it is not completely permanent, it is something that it's a process to go back to. So they're trying to make sure that this is a decision that they're really wanting to make.
Right.
Yeah.
That's on one aspect of it. On the other hand, it's not permanent.
Yeah.
They can go back to it. So I feel like they should have the right to just make that decision. If their parents are supporting of it and they can legally make that decision with the help of their parents, go for it. I completely understand, on the other hand, if it was a medical issue where it's like, oh, okay, this is a permanent surgery, I understand that. But with this, I'm glad they're making movement forward.
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. right? My career has been for the last 15 years in running South Florida's oldest LGBTQ direct service agency, and we started as a youth service agency. So while I'm not a person of trans experience, I have worked with many young people who have gone through the process. And the reality is that that first step is receiving the recognition that the world around you sees you for who you are and accepts you for who you are, and your gender marker on your license or your birth certificate or whatever it is reflects that.
Oh, it felt amazing.
It's an affirming step. And I think to your point, Evyn, which now I'm not, I think to your point, it's something that's reversible, right? We're not talking about gender reassignment surgery. We're not talking about puberty blockers, which is an issue that we're dealing with here in the United States.
Those are also not permanent.
No, but we have a lot of problematic legislation that seems to think otherwise. But I think, it is reversible. And so while, yes, it would be great if at the age of 16 they could change their gender marker in 3 months, but at least they've shortened the period.
Absolutely.
Well, next we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at Happening Out Television Studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m. with more than 30,000 watching every week.
Happy holidays! I'm Faye. What? Wishing you a happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, and the best holiday season ever. You deserve it. Feliz Navidad y prospero año nuevo. As a child, I loved the beautifully decorated churches during this time. I could look at them for hours. As an adult, I learned that that big sign in front of most churches that said all are welcomed usually didn't mean LGBTQ+. That is not the case at Sunshine Cathedral. When they say all are welcomed, they mean it. And that's why Sunshine Cathedral is #MyQueerChurch.
We finished tonight's queer news headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up trans rights. From LGBTQ plus news partner, advocate, and writer Alex Cooper. Transgender rights activist and son of Kentucky Democratic State Senator has died at 24. Trans rights activist Henry Berg-Brosseau, who worked to oppose anti-transgender legislation in his home state of Kentucky before going on to work with the Human Rights Campaign, died Friday at the age of 24. His mother, Kentucky Democratic State Senator Karen Berg, said Berg-Brosseau died by suicide. In a statement posted on Twitter via Blue Politics, Berg said that her son had spent his life, quote, working to extend grace, compassion, and understanding to everyone, but especially to the vulnerable and marginalized, end quote. Berg said he dealt with his mental health illness, quote, not because he was trans, but born from his difficulty finding acceptance, end quote. Read more at advocate.com.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up education. From LGBTQ plus news, partner Pink News and writer Amelia Hansford, Staff Student Solidarity Network in University of Edinburgh protests anti-trans film. Trans right activist and student Dylan Hamilton shared that he and several other individuals blocked the entrance to a theater room on December 14th, where the film Adult Human Female was set to be screened. The so-called documentary in defense of women's rights is described by its makers as an explainer on how far things have already changed for the worse for women. According to the Staff Student Solidarity Network in University of Edinburgh, the film's content roughly translates to the assertion that trans women are men and non-binary people don't exist at all. Read more at pinknews.com.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up travel. From LGBTQ plus news partner, Out Traveler, and writer Saskia Maxwell Keller. ARQ, a Sydney-based gay bar, reopens with aerialists dancers, and drag. ARQ, a beloved Sydney gay bar since 1999, reopened this weekend following a 2-year pandemic closure. The owner, Shad Denisi, told Star Observer, quote, "We are completely blown away with the support we received from the community. The venue was at capacity from the moment we opened," end quote. Before reopening, ARQ underwent a multi-million-dollar facelift. According to management, the, quote, "signature revolving doors have been enhanced with the addition of an immersive arcade-style gaming room and a dedicated champagne and cocktail lounge," end quote. Each night, ARQ will host aerialists, dancers, and drag performers. Read more at outtraveler.com. That is today's news for the LGBTQ+ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ+ evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ+ news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ+ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ+ stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Victor Diaz-Herman, and on behalf of these LGBTQ+ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Evyn Almanzar, Bob Hentschel, DJ Nena, and Gregg Shapiro, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. To our LGBTQ+ world, we wish you a good night.
Happy holidays.
LGBTQ+ news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community